MELANA CHASMATA by Triptykon. I have to admit, there's a high level of anticipation and a lot of eagerness that surrounds this album. Not only just within myself personally, but also within the entirety of the community. This is been a 4-year wait, really, ever since the debut album of Triptykon came to us, and really just blew us away. And since then, I've seen the band live and have been eagerly waiting this album's arrival. Tom Warrior Fischer, ever since leaving Celtic Frost, his work with this band has been absolutely tremendous. It's kind of expanding upon their last album, Celtic Frost's Monotheist, which has certainly continued to be, at least for me, one of those forgotten gems that a lot of people tend to maybe pass over, perhaps aiming to listen to one of their old classics instead, whenever in reality this was an exercise in darkness and an exercise in songwriting that is, well, very, very excellent, not to mention probably one of the best metal albums of the past 10 years. Same could probably be said about Triptykon's debut album. However, with that being said, with that level of mystique really being attached to a release, I mean, really, the fear is whether or not it holds up. I'm here to tell you that this 9-track, 67-minute album does that and more. There's a lot of emotion that can be conjured up from a Triptykon album, and that's certainly something that was true with their debut release, and it's one thing that's definitely transferred over with the songwriting style for this album here, for MELANA CHASMATA, and it's one where it definitely seems to have been enhanced, perhaps 100-fold, because this definitely, as people on the intrawebs would say, has got them feels. Feels awkward just to even speak that. This is an album, though, that really executes that level of darkness, that level of, real feeling in such a way that is kind of impossible to put into words. However, it is my duty to do my best to attempt it, so please bear with me if it sounds a bit jargled. How does this album really, set that bar so high and actually achieve it? How is this something that is, not only possible, but actually has happened? I think it's in the nature of the beast. It's in the nature of what this band is all about. Whenever you consider all of the different styles and all of the different ways that Triptykon really makes their music, it makes them very, very unique. There's definitely a very doom-oriented feel of this. This is almost like a continuation even further of the monotheist idea, and it almost lets you know exactly where Celtic Frost was kind of heading if Tom had his way. And it was definitely one that was going to be just ripe with phenomenal releases that were certainly going to showcase a band that had so many different various talents. However, it's almost better off in this form. It's better off in this form because now the vision can be executed exactly to perfection. Now the vision can actually be executed the way in which it was designed to be executed. Proof alone comes 2 tracks in. Now, this is not to say that the opener, Tree of Suffocating Souls, is a slouch, because it's not. It's nearly 8 minutes long of a crushing opener that definitely sets the tone and reminds you and harkens you exactly back to where Triptykon's first album left off. However, Bulkskin House, my pronunciations are of course terrible as usual, coverkillernation tradition continues, has riffs, has vocals, and has just an overall song structure and flow that is just absolutely crushing. This is where you start to recognize and realize where the feeling really comes from, and where a lot of those different emotions, those parallel emotions that really strike you as so different whenever you experience them, but in reality come from the same source, really start to showcase themselves. Whenever you hear the breakdown pattern on this album, on this song, whenever you hear the transitional elements, not a deathcore or metalcore breakdown per se, the transitional element is one that will definitely take you from a doomy place to one where you're almost motivated to weep a little bit of eye rain, as I said on Facebook. This is certainly something that is really unparalleled in its magnitude, not to mention it's something that, even though it feels as though the track is heading in this direction, and even though it makes musical sense, it still catches you off guard. And it's something that actually continues to catch you off guard, even after you know that it's coming. That's the sign of a song that definitely has a lot of musical power. It's the sign of a song that definitely has been able to reach down into an emotional landmine and actually found the one place where the mines have been swept, and they're able to plant right there. Hell of a freaking song. The continuation of this album is something that laces these beautifully. It's something that the elements that you have heard in the past out of this band and through monotheists continue to be explored and continue to be altered upon. We have songs here that are just 5 or 6 minutes of kind of almost ambience, but in reality it's a heavy ambience. It's one where it is very heavily constructed with the guitar really lacing around just kind of painful vocals at some points in time. This is the reason why this is an album that really showcases many elements of the emotional structure, and it's not just the negative ones. This is certainly something where you feel a little bit of resolve, a little bit of restoration that actually occurs on this. The center point of this album is the 8-minute long Black Snow, track number 8. It is 12 minutes long. If I said 8 minutes, it's because of excitement and just me being an idiot. This is a song that definitely has a ton of power etched behind it. This is one where even in its opening, 5 or 6 minutes, you immediately feel a lot of change. You immediately feel a lot of shift in the landscape. And this is one where it almost feels as though Triptykon was doing their best to take all of their previous work, including songs on this very album, and escalate it they did. This is a song that whenever I listened to it, the very first thought of mine was the first time I ever listened to Black Rose Immortal by Opeth. And this is not because it bears musical similarity. In fact, that's couldn't be any further from the truth. But it's instead that first moment of listening to a landmark epic track, something that definitely feels as though it's shaping the landscape of really not only the way you feel about a band, but the way in which the band is able to really leave its indubitable mark on the musical landscape as a whole, and the way in which that kind of transitions and alters your own thoughts and patterns toward the band. Something that maybe, if you didn't really feel convinced by this band prior, this is certainly one that's going to do so. And if it's not going to be that, then it's going to be In the Sleep of Death, the track that immediately is right before it, which is 8 minutes alone of just real solemn depression. This is something that really has a deep feeling and meaning to it. And it's one that definitely will cause those similar feels and those similar ideas as Black Snow. Waiting closes this track. It's nearly 6 minutes in length by itself, and it's one that really brings this album to a very haunting close. And that's kind of something that this album has that is extremely positive. It's an album that definitely keeps you guessing at every turn. It's one that is not afraid to take a couple of bold leaps, but is able to really tightly knit them together, really package them well with some ribbon that really gives it just a terrific flow and a fantastic playthrough. It definitely has all of the signs that you need in order to have just a transitional album for a career, one where instead of speaking about Triptykon as potential victims of the sophomore slump, we're actually looking at them as the anomaly. We're looking at them as the band that actually was able to quell that trend, to buck it, and actually release an album that is not only superior to its first, but perhaps could be superior to any other album heard this year. That's right, this album is that good. This is a journey that you almost immediately wish to revisit the minute that it finishes. This is 67 minutes that fly by, even though the music doesn't always have that aggressive tone. In fact, at some points in time, it crawls by, almost as though you're watching the slow decay of the room around you. This is something where it actually works to its advantage, as opposed to slowing down the pace to such a crawl where the album just starts to become bland. This is instead something that adds element to it. It adds feeling to it, and it adds a layer of black atmosphere to it that is just absolutely impossible to really conjure into words. Tom, I have to salute you. You really put forth not only your best effort, but you superseded it. This is something that actually took me by surprise, even though I had very high expectations for this album. Not only were you able to exceed those expectations, Tom, you were able to exceed them, Tom and company. I'm not going to distaste anybody in the band by not mentioning their representation on this album, but not only have you been able to exceed those expectations, but also you have been able to exceed them by such a wide margin that, damn, this is one of a kind. This is a one-of-a-kind experience, and one that you need to experience. Whenever this album drops, or if you're viewing this from the future, and it has dropped, and you don't have it, you need it. This is an album that is no longer just a try it out. It's no longer just a I think you'll enjoy it. This is a need, because this has serious potential to be revisited here in a couple of short months, 7 of them, as potentially the album of the year. 96 out of 100. It's hard to find a flaw with this disc. It really is. Some people will probably expose some things that they feel were incorrect about this album, or some things that they didn't enjoy. It's all opinion. If our opinions differ, that's great. I think that's fantastic. So tell me, since our opinions may differ, how you felt about this album. Tell me about this experience, what it was like for you. And do you feel that Triptykon has really found a way to elevate Tom and elevate the Celtic Frost legend to a new level? Or is this something that's a personal triumph, something that really is evoking a lot of Tom's personality and a lot of his inner vision, more so than one that perhaps he was shielded from showing in his previous band? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'll talk to you later.